All right, so this is another boomer rant in the woods. Look at this beautiful location here. So today I'm going to be talking about the question, should I use OpenBSD? And the answer is yes and no. The reason why I say this is because I believe in something called the toolbox philosophy. I believe that use whatever works best for your needs. So if you need GNU Linux, if you need the GNU Linux tools, if you need all the virtualization options and all the containers and Dockers, use Linux, honestly. Like, honestly, it's the best tool for the job. OpenBSD is a great tool. It has some great features. It's great for coding. It's great for security. It's great for, you can convert a router into an OpenBSD router. You can set up a firewall. You can convert a device into a DNS server. A lot of internet application uses, and you can serve web content with OpenBSD. OpenBSD is a great operating system for certain uses, and it's not for other uses. And if you are interested in using OpenBSD, I think the best place to start is to virtualize it. Get libvirt, or what's the one that Oracle makes? It's on the tip of my tongue. VirtualBox. Yes, you can use VirtualBox or any kind of VMware, and check out OpenBSD in a VM. Or if you have the means, buy a cheap refurbished computer. ThinkPads, Microsoft Surface Go, old Dell desktops, like about 5 to 10 years old. Refurbished Dell desktops, refurbished HP desktops, a lot of office computers, the ones that they have in pallets they're sending to the recycling. Those things, you know, and I always recommend to invest in refurbished computers because it's great for the environment. And honestly, a lot of these new devices are being developed by mining metals, and the mining is very dangerous. And oftentimes in these countries, it's children that are mining for a lot of these metals, or young people that, you know, are missing out on their childhoods. So, you know, I would hope to alleviate some of that strain on those people by, I'm not going to buy a lot of this new hardware. I'm going to buy recycled, refurbished hardware because it can be maintained, and it could have a lifespan double, triple, quadruple what the manufacturer intends to have it for before they want you to go buy a new one. You know, Apple, I'm looking at you. And also Right to Repair, you guys check out and subscribe to Louis Rossmann. I'm totally an advocate for that. But yeah, you know, if you're asking yourself, should I use OpenBSD? You know, is OpenBSD for me? Honestly, OpenBSD is for kind of low maintenance people. If you want all the whiz bang fancy features and advanced stuff that you see in Linux, you want the wine and the Proton, yeah, that stuff's really not going to be in OpenBSD. Yeah, you can have a nice looking OpenBSD desktop and a nice rice, and you can use DWM or Awesome and stuff like that, and Xmonad. But that's not, a lot of OpenBSD users aren't really all about that stuff. They're about getting work done. You know, a lot of them are web developers and programmers and IT professionals, and sometimes it's just some normal guys that just, man, I like the system. It's easy to administer. The commands are pretty straightforward. The system is a little less complicated. You know, in Linux, to get to A, B, C, D, all the steps that it takes to get something done. Oftentimes in OpenBSD, it's just A and B. You know, it's like hooking up to the internet. You set up your interface with ifconfig, and then you execute it with DHClient, and then you can just put a little config to have it do it automatically every time. And you know, instead of, you know, goofing around with WPA supplicant and IW and all that stuff. You know, system administration OpenB is much easier. It's a great coding environment because it's if you're writing programs, they're allocating memory. If you're misallocating memory the wrong way, OpenBSD is going to come down hard on you, and that program's going to crash, or it's not even going to compile. And a lot of other operating systems are a little bit more lenient with your memory usage. And you can even crank that up. You can crank up malloc, which is memory allocation. You can crank it up in OpenBSD to even be stricter on your program. And that helps create secure software. And, you know, we should be working on making secure software, not garbage pile heap stacks like, you know, like a lot of the web technologies. And some of them are good. But And OpenBSD is secure by default. You don't really have to, you know, with Linux, if you want to secure your operating system, sometimes you have to take a lot of extra steps and do these extra things, you know, like, you know, if you want to use Gen 2 hard and stuff like that. With OpenBSD, it's just secure right out the box. You really shouldn't have to flip any of the knobs or switches. There aren't really many knobs or switches to flip anyways, because the developers just make it to where you can't turn that stuff off. And that's a good thing. And, you know, and some things can get a little annoying. Like, the browsers are using Unveil, so you can only interact with the downloads folder. And sometimes that's kind of inconvenient. It really is. I'll tell you right now, sometimes I get a little annoyed that I have to constantly copy things over to the download folder if I want to upload them. But in the long run, I know that it's making my machine more safe. It's making it more secure. If somebody were to compromise my web browser, because web browsers are almost more complicated than operating systems themselves. There's more lines of code in the Chromium browser, or almost as much as there is in the BSD kernel. So, you know, you're playing with fire running a browser, and we all run browsers. I mean, you know, the internet's kind of boring without a browser. And some people, they don't mind there are HTML only browsers and terminal only browsers, and those are fun, but honestly I don't really have the desire to use those. I like seeing images. I'm a very visual person. I like videos, you know, I like that kind of stuff, and there's no reason why we can't use that stuff and also be secure at the same time. So that's the whole point of Pledge and Unveil, is to give us the option, sorry, the sun's coming in, give us the option of using those things without having to compromise our system security. So if an attacker were to compromise my Chrome browser, they can only see the downloads folder. They literally physically cannot see. It's physically impossible for them to see the rest of the file system. And they can't, a lot of kernel calls and syscalls are not possible because the program has been pledged and that stuff has been blocked at a code level and was compiled into it. So those kind of technologies are neat. They're useful. Now, there are cons to using OpenBSD. One of the biggest ones, the biggest complaints, is hardware support. Now, you guys got to understand, Linux has the hardware support that it has because of Silicon Valley and because of big tech, because of Google and Facebook and IBM, and a lot of these companies are just pumping millions and millions and millions of dollars into kernel development, into driver development. You know, they'll pay developers to go over, you know, they communicate with these companies, these hardware companies in China, and they'll give them the documentation that's not freely available. It's confidential, and they have to sign a non-disclosure agreement to make these drivers so that your hardware can work. And OpenBSD says, no, we're not going to do that. We will write drivers for hardware that is openly and freely documented, and we're not going to sign non-disclosure agreements. And with Linux, that's not a thing. So with all that money and with all that legal, you know, all that legalese and stuff, they are able to bring more hardware into the fray. And mostly it's all funded so these companies can profit off of it. So they can run all their machines on Linux, so they're not paying Microsoft, you know, the Microsoft tax. They're not paying for those licensing fees. And that's the thing. That's the reason why a lot of, you know, there's such a limited amount of hardware that works with OpenBSD. So if you want to use OpenBSD seriously, and you want to do more than just virtualize it, you know, it's great on the server, and you can always get a VPS like Vultr, and there's some other service too, like OpenBSD Amsterdam. You can run an OpenBSD virtualized server, and that's great. Or if you really want to be serious about using it at home, you just save up a little bit of money. It's usually like only about a $200, $150 investment. Sometimes they're throwing this stuff out in the trash, but just go to your local computer store and just get a refurbished machine. Get a Dell Optiplex 480. Sometimes they're just like giving those things away. Get an HP Elite desk. I have an HP Elite desk, and those things are great. Lenovo ThinkCenters. All the Lenovo ThinkCenters and Lenovo desktops and Dell desktops and HP desktops, those will run OpenBSD. And I'll put a link in the description. There's a developer named JCS, OpenBSD developer, and he's always getting new hardware working with OpenBSD. And sometimes, you know, he'll talk about how some things, not everything works, how some things need more development, or some, you know, they need more time and more work. But he's got OpenBSD working on a Microsoft Surface Go, on the newer Lenovo ThinkPads, the X1 Carbon. He's the new modular laptop. The framework laptop, he's got OpenBSD working on the framework laptop. And now, you know, it's been reported that OpenBSD is working on the Sci5 RISC-V boards. OpenBSD works on the Raspberry Pi 4. there are options to run OpenBSD on different hardware. In fact, a lot of you guys have Raspberry Pi 4s and Raspberry Pi 3s. OpenBSD is supported on those devices. So you can have, you know, and what's great about those devices is you can have like 5 different SD cards with different operating systems on them. So if you're just like, well, you know, OpenBSD is kind of cool on here, but, you know, there's a bunch of screen tearing. I can't really enjoy my movies and my videos. And you can just swap it out for Twister OS or the Raspberry Pi OS, or I think it's called Raspbian. You know, and you know, there's a lot of options. But OpenBSD is not necessarily an entertainment system. You can set it up for entertainment, and I've made videos about that. But it's mostly, it's better suited for just getting work done. It's better suited for learning and tinkering and programming and on the home user side. And it's also great for IT applications. It's great for appliances. It's great for securing your network. You know, you can roll your own router. Now, the thing about OpenBSD routers is they're not as performant as like a FreeBSD router, as like pfSense. I think they're limited to about 500 megabits per second, which for some people that might be a deal breaker. They might want gigabit internet. For me, you know, honestly, I don't care. You know, and one of these days, once I can afford it, I am going to convert a router into an OpenBSD router. There's certain brands that do support OpenBSD. And we'll get into that in future videos. So if you're asking yourself, should I use OpenBSD? Ask yourself, what kind of computer user am I? Am I high maintenance? Am I low maintenance? And what am I trying to do? What do I do with computers? If all you ever do is just kind of play video games and watch HD 4K video, then probably, you know, unless you buy certain specific hardware, you know, like Radeon is one of the best graphics cards you can use with OpenBSD because of all its open source drivers. So if, you know, Radeon's up to the R9 and some of the newer ones, we have the AMD GPU driver now. But you see, I use a Radeon Island series, a Radeon Turk, and that thing is fantastic, and it handles most, you know, basic 3D gaming, and you know, it does handle I think it's 1220p. I might be butchering that. The step above 1080p, it can do about up to that much. And you know, if you need more than that, if you need ultra 4K, and maybe you're doing a lot of graphic design and stuff like that, you know, it's probably not the best option for you. It's probably not. I wouldn't recommend it. So, you know, I'm not a shill. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, OpenBSD is the greatest operating system ever. If you're not using it, you're a retard. No. Use the best tool for the job. Use what works for you. If you want to use Gentoo, use Gentoo. If you want to use Ubuntu, use Ubuntu. Okay? But I will tell you, use free software. Don't use that proprietary garbage that spies on you and it takes away your freedoms and it limits you and limits your creativity, okay? You know, I mean, I understand some people need to use that stuff for their jobs, and but a lot of people don't necessarily really need it. There's free software options that are often better available, but they just, you know, they're just making excuses. And I say, you know, I mean, I'm all for freedom. If that's the case, then whatever. But I'm going to always advocate use free software, because Windows is spying on you. There are backdoors. It limits your freedom, and it tears up your hard drive, because that thing is just always constantly writing to the hard drive and just grinding away. You should call it Grindos, because it just eats up your hard drive. But and Mac, you know, why would you pay $2,000 for a machine that has the power that you could build for like $600 or $700 that has the same amount of computing power? You know, you're basically just paying to get into their little private. And Apple is so bad now that they are logging and sending to a third-party server everything that you do, every program that you open, every time you open up a text editor, even when you open up Vim in a terminal, they're telling a third-party server that you just opened all that stuff up. And they're logging it, and they're logging the IP address, and they're logging the time and the date and everything. And that's absurd. I mean, people are like, well, I have nothing to hide. I'm not doing anything wrong. Yeah, okay, well, are you gonna take a shower and get dressed in a glass house so anybody walking by can just see you naked? I mean, come on, we deserve privacy. We deserve private lives. Not everything has to be out there in the open. And you know what? It's not for our security. It's not for our benefit. If they do it because, well, for one, people buy that information from them, like the government. And for two, it's all about control. And it's all about advertising, and then you are the product. When you use Apple, when you use Windows and Apple are not the product. You are the product. They are data mining the crud out of you. And I mean, that just happens with most of us on the internet, but you can actually mitigate that and control that. And there are plenty of privacy tools on OpenBSD. OpenBSD has the Tor browser. We have WireGuard. We have DNSCrypt proxy. We have Squid proxy. There's a lot of things that you can do on OpenBSD to work on privacy. And sometimes it's just best practices. Just like stop buying stuff from Amazon. Stop going on Facebook. You know, I mean, yeah, and I know I'm one to talk. We're on YouTube right now, and YouTube data mines you too. But you know, you can't completely eliminate it all, but you can kind of mitigate it. You can kind of put a stopgap on a lot of it, and just kind of limit the amount of information that's being harvested from you. I know I'm kind of getting off topic here, but so the original topic is, should I use OpenBSD? And my answer is absolutely yes, but only do it if you feel like it's the right tool for you. And if you want to just kind of like play around and learn it and learn about it because you're interested or you're curious, then like I said, spin up a VM or get your hands on a cheap refurbished computer or a cheap old laptop and just put it on. And also, OpenBSD is not Linux. Don't try to use it like Linux. Don't do all the things you do in Linux in OpenBSD and then wonder why nothing's working right and everything's confusing and it's this huge culture shock, because you will experience an immediate culture shock. All Linux users do, because Linux kind of gets your mindset in a certain way of doing things. So when you use OpenBSD, everything's different and it's a huge culture shock. So my biggest recommendation is watch my videos and also go on the OpenBSD website and read the frequently asked questions. And we're going through the frequently asked questions, like the whole thing. You know, I mean, my first video, you know, I had to do some announcements and little things in the beginning, so we kind of got off track and then we had a little bit of a late start on it. But my next video, we're going to dive right in, and we're going to get through that section 1 and start with section 2. And we're going to go through the entire thing, including we're going to compile the whole system from source. And you can do this in a VM. You can follow along with me in a VM. You don't have to touch your original operating system. You don't have to switch over. This is all about education and learning and awareness and advocacy and understanding that OpenBSD has a lot to offer. It has security mitigations. It has cool engineering practices. Its kernel has like one of the smallest lines of code out of any kernel out there. And there's just so many good things about it. And yes, I understand hardware compatibility is kind of terrible. There's not as many ports. You can't run Wine. There's no multi-lib. There's no, you know, there's no running Linux binaries. And if you want that stuff in BSD, there's always FreeBSD. But personally, I feel like, man, if that stuff's really what's important to you, just use Linux. Linux is not bad at all. I have Linux machines running, and I'm not like a weirdo about it, saying, oh, Linux is terrible. It's a toy, and I would never use it, and I'm gonna judge anybody. That's dumb, you know, like. It's just like, these are tools, man, in the toolbox. You know, like grab the wrench, grab the hammer, what you need, and use it. And make the machine work for you. The computer should work for you, okay? It shouldn't be the other way around. You're constantly working for the computer, okay? I think that's all. And I think this is a crazy rant. I'm just going off. But crazy, I'm not a boomer, I'm a millennial, but crazy millennial rant in the woods. It's a beautiful day here in sunny Idaho. Look at that beautiful water. And that's all. You all have a great day, and happy hacking on OpenBSD or Linux or whatever you happen to use. Plan 9, FreeBSD, Dragonfly, NetBSD, whatever. You guys just use the heck out of it and make it work for you, and have a great day. All right, bye.